Hi, this is Randy. Welcome to my channel. Hope you're having a good day. I sure am. Please subscribe to the channel, bottom right hand corner of the screen. If you give me a thumbs up, it'll help me get this pushed out. Thanks to everyone who has subscribed. It really means a lot to me. I really appreciate it. And thank you for your help. Today we're going to talk about my first-hand experience at racism. Now, racism is alive and well, all right? But it shouldn't be, but it is. So I can only tell you about my own experience, and so let me tell you this first before I do this. In Genesis chapter 1 and 27, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female. He created them. God made us all. It doesn't matter if you're white, you're black, you're brown, you're yellow, you're red, you're purple. All right, it doesn't matter. We're all children of God, and God created us, and that's the way it ought to be. When I was a young man in high school, back in the early 70s, I had a friend, and he was a pretty close friend. We were friends the whole time we were in high school, and talked to him 2 or 3 times after that. He lived in a different part of town than me. His job took him somewhere else. We lost touch. But the point I'm making is he was black, all right? And so in the early 70s, having a black guy as a friend wasn't something, I guess, that happened every day or whatever. And so one day after school, I had to stay late. I was playing for a practice for the orchestra. They were going to do something with the choir, something like that. I don't remember exactly, but I stayed late. All right. Well, he was a wrestler, and so he just got done with I don't know if it was a tournament or if it was a practice. It's hard to remember. It's over 50 years ago. But anyway, I ran into him, and I said, "What's up? What are you doing here?" "I had wrestling. What are you doing here?" Blah, blah, blah. And he said, "I missed my bus." He had a bus pass. He said, "I missed my bus up on Grand, so I'm going to have to sit around for about an hour or start walking." I said, "Well, you're in luck. My dad loaned me his car today and let me come because I was staying a little late tonight, and I never hardly ever get to drive the car by myself, but I got it." So I offered him a ride home. He hopped in. We started down Compton Street, headed for the north end of town. And when we got down to the north end of town, cop pulled up behind me. He lit me up. So I pulled over, and I said, What in the world did I do wrong? I know I stopped at that stop sign really good. As soon as I crossed the intersection, he was sitting this way, and I was going this way, and he popped right in behind me and lit me up. So I pulled over, and he said, "Keep your hands on the wheel. Don't make no funny moves." I said, "What are you?" And he acted like, he had done this before or whatever. So I put my hands on the wheel. This was the first time I ever got pulled over. And he come up to the window and he goes, "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" I said, "I'm taking my friend home." "All right. Who are you?" So I told him. I said, you want to see my driver's license? What did I do wrong? I know I stopped at that stop sign. He goes, "You don't ask the questions, I do." And he started using profanities, told me to get out of the car. So we got out of the car. He was still sitting in there. Then the other cop came up on that side, told him to get out. And they were using profanities one after another. So I went over to the sidewalk, and he started asking me if we had anything on us, do we have any weapons, do we have any drugs? So I tried to tell him it was my dad's car, but every time I tried to open my mouth, he said, "You only answer my question." He took his nightstick and jabbed me in my chest like that. Said, "You don't ask the questions, I ask the questions. Shut the, boy, you let me have it." So by this time, my head's about ready to explode. I'm really getting aggravated because we hadn't done nothing wrong. He wouldn't tell me why he pulled us over. All right? So another cop car pulls up. These 2 guys get out. They open my trunk. My dad didn't have a lot of stuff in his trunk. I think he had maybe a jumper cables and maybe an extra can of oil or something like that. But his spare tire was underneath the thing. They screwed that off, pulled his spare tire out. One guy popped the hubcaps off. Another one popped the hood while one's inside taking everything out of the glove box, and they took the air breather off the car. I mean, they're just going all over it. And so I tried again. I said, "Are you guys trying to find drugs? Is that what you're trying?" Boy, he jabbed me with that nightstick again. Said, if you say one more thing, blah, blah, blah. I mean, he was really letting me have it. So my friend was saying out of the side of his mouth, don't say nothing, don't say nothing. So I shut up. When they got done, then he asked me for my driver's license. Well, I gave it to him. He looked at it, and he said, you want to know why I pulled you over? I said, that would be nice, because you're a salt and pepper team. And at first I didn't understand him, but my friend did right away. And I said, what do you mean, salt and pepper team? White guy and a black guy. Anytime a white guy and a black guy is driving around a car in this neighborhood, they're up to no good. I said, well, all we are is high school kids, friends, and I'm giving him a lift home. That's all it is. He goes, well, in this neighborhood, if you come driving around much with a black guy in the car, you're going to get pulled over about every time. So I said, all right. So they started to leave. He said, you can go. He gave me my license. I said, what about all the stuff? You know, they had my hubcaps laying on the ground, my spare tires out, all this, everything pushed out of my glove box all over the front seat and on the floor. He turns around and jabs me again. Says, what about that? You got a problem with that? And then you walk off and left. And my friend told me, he said, well, we dodged a bullet. I said, what? He's trying to help me put everything back. By this time, we got a crowd out there looking at us. And I didn't know, but about a half a block up, these were all apartments there. They were modern apartments. They wasn't very old at all. A little ways up, probably about 100 feet, was his apartment. I said, look, I'm just going to throw everything in the trunk. Just help me get my air breather back on, close the hood, and I'm going to head home. And, he apologized to me. I said, you have nothing to apologize about. We didn't do anything wrong. I mean, we didn't do nothing wrong. So we closed up. I went home. Well, when I went in, my dad said, you're not acting right. What's going on? So I'm not going to make a big story of it. I'm just going to tell you, I told my dad verbatim what I told you. I just pulled my tennis shoes off. He said, put your shoes on. We're going somewhere. I said, what? He goes, put your tennis shoes on. We're going somewhere. And my dad at that time pastored a pretty large church. We were running 300 to 400 people on Sunday. Not only that, we had a couple lawyers in our church. We also had a guy, one of those lawyers was an alderman for this city. And he was a friend of my father's. And my dad was well known in the community. So he said, let's go. We went out and got in the car, and I said, I thought he wanted me to go somewhere to lift something for him or whatever, because my dad had had a heart attack. He drove me right down to 3rd District Police Station. I was petrified. I didn't want to get out of the car. I was still scared. And my dad said, son, I'm with you. Nothing's going to happen. We're going inside. So we went inside, and I'm scared. And even with my dad. And my dad always brought me peace and calm. I know my dad was born in 1895. He's a lot older than me. My dad was a boxer for years. And amateur boxer, and my dad knew how to take care of himself. And so we went in there, and he asked for the commander, and they brought a lieutenant out. He said, I'm as high as you're going to get. We changed the shifts, and I'm the lieutenant in charge. And my dad said, I need to talk to you. He told him who he was. They took us back to a room, and my dad told him that I got illegally pulled over, and said, you tell him verbatim what you told me. So I told the policeman, reluctantly, the lieutenant, what happened. He apologized to my father, and he apologized to me. And he said, I'm really sorry that happened. He said, could you wait a minute or two? Well, he went out. I told my dad, I said, look, I just want to get out of here. If these guys find out I complained, they're in our neighborhood, they're going to be looking for me. I don't want this. He goes, we're going to take care of this, son. Relax. Let me take care of it. So this cop comes back in with these 2 guys. He was gone about 10 minutes. They had just changed shifts. These guys were getting ready to go home, I guess, and he snagged them, brought them in. When he opened the door and they walked in, their mouths were, I'm not lying, they saw me sitting there with my dad, and he said, close the door, and the policeman closed the door. He said, I want you to hear a story that I heard from the pastor's son here. So they had me tell it again in front of them. And they both just kept their heads down, never said anything. And when I was done, the lieutenant said, you guys care to comment on this? Do you deny this? And they said, no, but it was a salt and pepper team. All right. And my dad said, I'm going to tell you something. You jab my son again with that billy club, you pull my son over illegally, I'll have your job and I'll do everything I can to put you in jail. And then he slid the card out on the table of the alderman who was an attorney. He said, this man goes to my church as a friend of mine, and I know a lot of people, and if you lay your hand on my boy again, you're going to wish to God you'd never been born. Are we clear on this? And I thought, my dad don't know he's in a police station. These guys are wearing guns. They got billy clubs. I was worried about my dad, and I was worried about what was going to happen to me if they ever saw me out on the street by myself, and like it or not, when I was a kid, police used to tune people up. I mean, it happened. I've seen it many times. That being said, not all policemen are bad. I got relatives who are policemen. I even have a second or third cousin was an FBI agent for almost 40 years, and I've got family members that are in the military. Plus, I had 3 nephews that were military policemen for several years. Got nothing against law enforcement. They do a great job. I'm talking about racism today. And if somebody does something that's wrong. And they had them apologize to me. And you know what my dad said? He said, Lieutenant, I'd like them to go out there to the street where I parked my car, and they're going to put my hubcaps back on my car. They're going to put that spare tire back in there. They're going to pick up all that paperwork on the floor. They're going to clean up the mess they made and apologize personally to my son. They never apologized to him. They apologized to me. The lieutenant goes, that sounds like a good deal with me. I'll go out with y'all. And so they apologized, and out the door we went. They put my hubcaps back on. They put the tire in. They were doing everything. And, of course, a lot of policemen were standing around looking at them, and were staring at them. When they got done, my dad said, I'm going to just tell you guys one more. I don't hate you. I hold no animosity toward you. But he put his arm on my shoulder. He goes, this is my son. I love him more than life. And if you ever lay a hand on my son again, you ever pull him over illegal again, I will have your job and I'll do everything I can to put you in jail. They apologized. I got in the car and we left. And I'm not going to be honest. I started crying when we left. I was nervous. I was still nervous. Because I seen what they did to a lot of people in the neighborhood. You don't want to be on the bad side of them. But that's what happened. And it all happened because I had a black guy in the car who was my friend. Racism. They profiled us and pulled us over because we were a salt and pepper team. Now, folks, I'd like to think that we're past that today, 50 years later, but probably not, all right, in a lot of cases. Like I said, I think 90 to 95% of policemen are good policemen. They do a good job. Without them, our country would be horribly worse off. But racism has no place. Thank God today, if you profiled somebody like that and told them why you pulled them over, you'd probably get you might probably lose your job or something like that. But when I was a kid, they didn't lose their job. But my dad, the policeman did tell them, the lieutenant says, I'll give this to the commander, and they're going to be disciplined for this. What happened? I don't know. I never found out. Then I'll tell you one other one, since we're on the subject of racism. My father was booked to preach a 2-week revival from a minister he knew in a southern state. And I'm not going to tell you what state it is, because I don't want to paint people with a brush, a wide brush. And this happened when I was about 10 or 11 years old. I'm sorry I can't remember what year it is. It's just too long ago. 50 years ago, this is 60 years ago. I can't remember. But I remember what happened. I remember everything else. We went to this southern state, and we got in on a Friday afternoon. My dad was supposed to preach Sunday to Sunday and Sunday to Sunday. He wanted to get in a day or two early because the pastor wanted to take him out to eat, and my dad had known him for years. So my dad told him after we got to his house, put our luggage in there, he said, I'm going to take my boy downtown. We're going to look around. I'm going to get some lunch. So he took us downtown. Well, we went by several stores, and it was an old downtown, like most communities have this day. Probably today they're dead because of the shopping centers. But back then, that was your main street, was where, the Western Auto was at, and the Five and Dime and all that stuff. So we walked by a business and it said no blacks. We walked by another one that said whites only. It didn't say no blacks, it said whites only. Whites only. I seen that on 3 or 4 businesses. I didn't know what, I couldn't put my head together what it was, whites only. All right. So we went into this restaurant and my dad ordered us some lunch. We ordered lunch and everybody behind the counter that was cooking, handing the food out, waiting on the counter thing, they were all black people. And so I had no idea, that what was going on because the sign on the front said whites only. So I finally asked my dad, I said, that sign says whites only. Is that talking about people? I said it real low. And my dad said, yes, son, it is. It's not right. And I said, well, they're in here. He goes, that's because they work here. So when we went out, we walked down the sidewalk after we ate, and there was a black gentleman coming our way, and he was elderly, walking with a cane, elderly. And when he saw us coming, he stepped off the sidewalk into the gutter, took his hat off, and did this. My dad immediately stepped down off the sidewalk, put his arm around him, and said, Pops, you don't have to move out of my way. Come on, get back up on the sidewalk. I'll never forget this. He said, sir, you're going to get me beat up bad. Please just get back up there and walk on by. My dad said, I'm not going to do that. And so they talked for a minute or two, and everybody that was walking on the sidewalks, both sides of the street, they all stopped. They were staring at us. And I thought that was odd, because I went up on Cherokee Street when I was a kid. That was our shopping thing, all the stores. People didn't stop for nothing. I mean, they'd run you over trying to get in a store. And so we went down the sidewalk to a place. My dad was going to get me something. I forgot what it was. He was going to get me something, a little, kind of like a 5 and dime. Maybe it was I don't even remember. I was just a kid. But I remember we were going and he wanted to get me something out of the store that he thought I should have. I didn't know if it was extra socks or what it was, something like that. Anyways, we got to the door and there was a black family coming out. My dad opened the door for him and said, come on out. And he took his hat off. They stepped off the side. They wouldn't come out. My dad tried to get them to come out. They were at the door before us. They wouldn't do it. So my dad went in and they started to leave. My dad grabbed the door and held it for him. And that man turned back towards my dad as his family's walking out. He goes, don't do that. Don't do that. You'll get us in trouble. So when I got back to the hotel room with my dad, because we wasn't staying with the minister. My dad wanted a hotel room. I don't remember why, but we got our bags in. We went to his house. We met with him. Dad told him we're going to go out to eat and all that. And he said, I'm going to take you out tonight. We'll get a good dinner. My wife isn't home right now, etc. So we went downtown. It wasn't a big town. I don't remember the population. I was just a kid, but it wasn't a city. It was a town. And so anyway, we got back to the hotel room. I said, Dad, I don't know what's going on. I don't understand it. And so my dad told me about racism and how that separate water fountains, separate schools, not allowed in certain businesses and all. I couldn't believe that. We were from Missouri. I mean, when I went into a store, there was black people in the store. When I went to school, high school, there was black kids in the high school. My dad preached in black churches. Some black ministers came on and preached in my dad's church. I'd never seen nothing like that. I'd never seen signs that said whites only. But I did when I was down there. And so my dad preached Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Monday night. Tuesday, the pastor called us at the hotel and said he needed to meet with my dad, wanted us to come over to his house. So my dad goes, before we go out, we need to run over to the pastor's house. We went over there, went inside, and I'm paraphrasing here. I don't remember verbatim, but I got a rough idea. Like I said, I was a kid. Please forgive me. Man, you can't, 40, 50, 60 years, you can't remember. If that preacher had a lineup of pictures of what he looked like when I was a kid today and they gave it to me, I wouldn't be able to pick him out. I don't remember what he looked like, but I remember what happened to us. And he told my dad, he said, look, I've had several phone calls from around the community. people are really upset with you and you keep talking to black people, you keep trying to open the door with them, you stand on the street and talk to them. He goes, you can't do that down here. You're not up in Missouri no more. And my dad goes, well, if I can't do that, then I don't need to be here. He goes, well, he told my dad, he said, Pastor May, I've known you for years and I love you. But he said, you're going to cause me and my church trouble if you keep doing that. And then my dad, I'll never forget, my dad stood up and held his hand out and shook his hand. As he shook his hand, my dad said, well, we'll go pack our bags and we'll leave today. He goes, I don't want you to leave. We've had 3 real good services. People are looking forward. My dad said, I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to treat people like they're second-class citizens. I'm not going to be mean to people because of the color of their skin. So if it's going to get your church in trouble and cause you problems, then perhaps I need to move on because I'm not going to stop it. And he said, my son here is getting his first taste of this. He had no idea this went on. He said, we're leaving. So my dad shook his hand. We went and packed. Dad got in the car and we left. It only lasted 3 services, not 2 weeks, 3 services. And when we got about halfway home, my dad finally put enough coins in a phone or whatever he did to call my mom and tell her we were coming home. When we got home, my dad told her everything that happened. I'll never forget that. So racism is not right. Hating people because of the color of their skin, treating people mean because they don't look like you, that's not godly. God created us all in his image. Matthew 22 verses 38 and 39 says, this is great and foremost commandment. The second is like it, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. You're supposed to love your neighbor as yourself. You love other people like you love yourself. You don't hate people. Unfortunately, we see so much hate on TV. Reporters that are just hate people and they use profanities and everything else. We see too much hate. It does not say only love the people that are the same color skin as you. Only love the peoples from the same area as you. The great commandment is love your neighbor as you love yourself. It doesn't say only the people of your color. John 13, 34 and 35. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you, and you also love one another. By this all men will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. We should love everybody. We should care about everybody. I'm going to try to wrap this up, but let me tell you this. I went to a Bible school for a year. I went every Tuesday night and Thursday night, 2 hours each night, taking courses at a Bible school because I worked a full-time job. And I went to the Bible school. Almost, not all, but almost. I'm guessing 80, 90% the people in the Bible school was black. Matter of fact, I was the only one in the class that didn't have a Schofield Bible. I wasn't Baptist, and they were. And we were friends. I worked with one of the guys, and he was one of my good friends. We worked together for almost 11 years. He was a minister. And he come up to me one day and handed me a business card and told me, he said, Randy, my sister's church, she's the head of the choir, they're looking for somebody to preach a pastor appreciation Sunday. And they want you to come preach at their church. And when I seen the name of the church, I said, that's not the one on Kings Highway, is it? He is, yeah. I said, oh my Lord, that's a huge church. He laughed. He goes, they'll love you. They'll love you, and you'll love them, and you'll get along great. So I called him. I did go to that church and preach. My mom took Sunday off and went with me because she was really happy and proud that I was going to be preaching at that church. And so we went there, and we went in, and I'm guessing 600 to 800 people. It was a big church. And me and my mom were the only white people. Their pastor was white, and I didn't know that. I didn't know that he was, but he was when I got there. And I preached, and before I did, they said, we heard you sing. Could you sing a song or two? And when I started singing one, the choir knew it. They all stood up. And the choir director looked at me and she said to me with her lips, "Can we sing with you?" I nodded my head yes. They joined me on the chorus. And we had a great time. And we had a real good time. But I did have a minister, when he found out I went there, he goes, "I'm surprised you went over. It's an all-black church." I said, "And why would that be a problem?" Well, I didn't say it was a problem. I just would think that they want somebody to preach that was what? And I said, "What? Their own color?" I said, "Boy, you got a lot to learn about the Bible." And me and him kind of had some words. And so my friend who told me his sister was a choir director, he come to our church and preached a couple times a year. My mom loved him. The people loved him. Everybody loved him. And he was a great preacher. And I loved the guy. And to this day, I still love him. I don't know where he's at. I lost track of him over the years, but we were good friends. Why? I didn't care to me that he was black. I mean, not at all. We got to realize that the letter to the Galatians in the Bible that Paul wrote, there is neither Jew nor Greek, slave, non-free, male or female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. We're all one in Christ Jesus. All right? I've got 3 grandchildren who are 50% Hispanic. I got 5 great-grandchildren who are 75% Hispanic. All right? Beautiful kids. I love them. All right? We need to realize that racism is wrong. It's against God's word. Paul wrote that there's no Jew, there's no Greek, slave and free, male and female, for we're all one in Christ Jesus. We're all children of God. We were created in his image. All right? We were created in his image. So you need to realize that and learn to love everyone and not hate people because of what state they're from or where they live or because they're not the same color as you. So we understand in the eyes of God, we should feel not inferior because the difference between me and someone else, we're both human. We're both children of God. We shouldn't feel inferior or different to someone else and treat them that way. We should treat everyone of every race and every creed and every color the same and love everyone, not just certain people, all right? Genesis 1:27. God created man in his own image. Remember that. Verse 26. Then he said to them, let's make man in our image according to our likeness and let them rule over everything. God created man and woman, and we're created in his image. Last but not least, Ephesians 4:32. If you didn't get anything yet, maybe you get this. Be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, has forgiven you. Be kind to one another. Being kind to one another is not talking hateful to people. Being kind one to another is not calling people names. Being kind to one another is not hating people because of the color of their skin. Being kind to one another does not give us the right to treat people bad. And I hope that my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren know that. Next time I see them, they live in Arizona. Next time I see them and they come here to visit, they're going to be old enough, most of them, I can sit down and talk to them about this and let them know how precious they are in the eyes of the Lord, how beautiful they are, and let people know that racism has no place in the church. It has no place with Christians, and we shouldn't hate people and judge people just because of where they are from. I hope that you get something out of this. I really didn't want to do this, but I just felt like I needed to. Do I know everything about race? No. Have I seen other things besides what I told you? A few. I didn't want to talk about all of them, and this video will be really long. But let me end this and telling you that story I told you about the police officers. Let me reiterate. I had policemen in my family over the years. I've had military policemen in my family over the years. 3 nephews that were military policemen for several years. And I love the police and law and order, and they do a good job to protect us, and they protect and serve. But if there's an officer out there that treats people like they treated me when I was in high school, that is not right. It shouldn't be tolerated. And thank God today they have remedies for that. Something would have happened to them after we left. I don't know. Maybe they suspended them for a day. I don't know. They didn't tell us. He just said they'll be dealt with and we'll get this resolved. He also told my dad, I forgot to tell you this, your son will never get pulled over for that again. It'll never happen. I'm going to talk to the watch commander. We're going to tell every shift. And evidently they know the Fourth and Fifth Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, pulling people over when they haven't done a traffic violation is illegal. And trying to get people to get out of their car and search their car without a warrant, it isn't right. But I was a kid. We're talking back 50 years ago and more, 55 years ago. So things like that happen. Hopefully not as much today. But love people. Don't hate them for who they are. Love them. God loves everybody. I love you too. Please remember to subscribe to the channel. Hit that button on the bottom. Give me a thumbs up. And I'm going to do like I always do. Thank you for your time this time. Till next time, old Rev May is going to sign off. You have a wonderful day, and thank you for watching my channel.